you were for a very long time at the World Council of Churches, and there was a mention in passing, there was much you said about how the Commonwealth was not about Commonwealth at all, and how African women in particular, economically and otherwise, at risk and marginalized. But you mentioned there that when you were working for the WCC, you conducted a study on violence against women. Is that?
No, it doesn't. The direct studies on violence against women were right here at the center, but at the World Council, I was Deputy General Secretary. I didn't have program. But I was very close to the women's desk, naturally, because and the study, I think the study out of which this violence thing came is the first there was women, and there was the Constance Harvey's study, which was cooperation of women and men in church and society, something like that. You can check the actual titles. This study, the originating motive came from the women's desk at the time when Brigadier Bam from South Africa was the executive for the women's desk. And they had decided to have this study, which I think eventually was called Community of Women and Men in Church and Society. And then the Central Committee had decided that they should lodge the study in Faith and Order. If they lodge the study in Faith and Order, then the council will support. So okay, lodge it in Faith and Order. So the study was lodged in Faith and Order, and an American woman theologian, Constance Harvey, headed the study, Community of Women in Church and Society. That went on, I think it was a 3-year study or something, and got reported. Now, out of that study, just around that time, the UN concentration on women, generally the UN decade for women and so on, started. And at the end of the UN decade, the women said the decade has come to an end. We have checked the UN efforts. We didn't see any church featuring in the UN decade for women. So what are the churches doing? So out of that came the 1988 World Council study, which was called Decade of the Churches in Solidarity, Decade of Churches in Solidarity with Women. And it is as part of this Churches Solidarity with Women that this issue of violence came in. I went to the council around that time. I was in the council first in the youth department, then I came back doing my own teaching, and then was invited back to the deputy position. So 87, I was there when the women were preparing to confront the Central Committee with the fact that the churches have done nothing. And we got this program approved with all kinds of codicils. They were approved and called Churches Decade in Solidarity with Women.
Well, so from February this year, we've been organizing gender studies in ministry workshop for all the students. We are discussing gender studies in 3 areas. We are looking at social issues, we're looking at legal issues, and then we're also looking at biblical and theological issues. Each student is supposed to take all these courses or workshops before they graduate. Initially, when we started, it was not graded. So it's just a workshop, like an interaction that we were having for the students. But from this semester, it's going to be graded. And
so that tells me that it's
yes,
regarded much more
yes,
as something more
yes,
important.
Yes, and actually, the students are enjoying it. First, because it's a workshop, so it gives them a lot more room for interaction. And then their resource people are also not their lecturers. They're people that we bring from outside to come and talk to them. And so we are able to see the level of thinking or the interpretation the students give to certain issues, especially
how
on
have you
gender
found
issues.
it? What have you found? What kinds of tendencies?
Well, for example, during the legal issues, let me start with the social issues. So we got this resource person from the Gender Studies Department from the University of Ghana to come and talk to the students, and we were discussing roles, gender roles, and the fact that we have a lot of assumptions, that we have assumed that, for example, it is women who have to bath the babies and back them and feed them. And we think that that's how we met it. She says it's a Ghanaian thing to feel that that's how we met it, and so it must continue that way. But when you go outside Ghana to other African countries, you see men carrying the babies at the back. So the fact that they met it like that doesn't mean that it can't change. And you hear the arguments between the students, some thinking that, yes, men can also help with this and can help with that, but they think the approach is not, the best, because it's as if the women are demanding it and we have to ask nicely. And so that the classes are mostly very interactive. And by the time the students leave here, they understand that what we're trying to do is not to impose our ideologies on them, but we are asking, or we are interrogating the already formed perceptions about the gender roles and what we think as a seminary is the appropriate thing to do.
Ghana is so hospitable. It doesn't matter. Everybody comes here. All the Nigerians, when they run away from their chaos, they come here and join in creating more chaos in Ghana. So that one is like people feel this. And I think it's because we are not super rich and we are not super poor and everybody is welcome. I think if we get super rich, we will start discriminating.
Yeah, well, I think you have a point, and what we're seeing now with the migration crisis in Europe and North America, with people stopped at the border from coming in to escape problems that were created by the rich countries, our rich countries. It's very disheartening.
The migration
People would rather say we'll just drown in the ocean rather than knock on our door. It's
for those of us who have been unfortunate in knowing the history of these things, it's really traumatizing just to see. And then the way the Latin Americans react is quite different. The pilgrimage that they are now making towards the US
The Hondurans.
The Honduras, and now 2 other countries have joined,
Yeah.
and it's becoming a stream. I don't know how good old Trump is going to handle that.
Well, he's ready for
Just sending
blocking.
tweets.
Yeah, I know it's
That's his style.
horrible. In a country that the problems were created by American administrations, weren't they? Yeah. Mercy Oduyoye, we are absolutely delighted, and on behalf of the Shiloh Project, we want to thank you for your time and
Thank you.
for your wisdom.
Thank you. I'm happy to be among the women of Shiloh.
Thank you.
Thank you.